You're watching HQ Spotlight on CBS Sports Network. Jacqueline D'Agostino, Tommy Tran here with you. Tommy, in the commercial break, I was looking to see if my team was going to be talked about. Because, if you pick in the top 5 for almost 3 years in a row, the Jacksonville Jaguars better be a topic.
Yeah, good news for you. We will tackle the Jags with our 2 draft analysts here. And a good chance that your team will be mentioned. So make sure that, it's interesting. And I think the NFL's done a good job, Jacqueline, because we're 3 weeks away from the NFL draft. They've kind of gone to cold cities to host these events because A, it's warmer. And B, you never want to go to a Super Bowl, most likely, at Green Bay this year, Pittsburgh next year. I know they haven't decided 27 at last check, so they've done a good job. Nashville for the draft. It's where you want to go. Fans can get hyped up. And, of course, they want to look at the best prospects, 2 of them at Colorado with Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter. Well, there's a report out there that the Browns and Giants may actually pass on the quarterback. We're not that far removed from Miami's Pro Day, in which Cam Ward really solidified his selection as the top overall pick. It just remains to be seen if the Titans are going to make that selection. But here's a look at Ryan Wilson's latest mock. He does have Tennessee going Cam Ward at number 1. And then he's kind of slotted Shedeur Sanders back at 6. Shedeur was going to the Raiders for the early stages of the draft process, but when Geno Smith arrived there in Vegas, he got pushed up to 3. Maybe even further than 6. So let's bring in a couple of our draft analysts in Emory Hunt and Mike Renner. Mike, I'm going to give you first word. What do we make, if anything, about this report here that teams may pass on Shedeur?
I think it's real. And now 2 and 3, I think the bigger thing is not necessarily about Shedeur, but about the fact that Admiral Carter and Travis Hunter are insanely good prospects. And those are 2 teams that, for as much as you would love to have a quarterback of the future, those staffs want to win now to keep their jobs, right? I think Andrew Berry, Kevin Stefanski, if they have another dud, they could be out of work. Joe Shane, Brian Dable, everyone knows that they'll be out of work if they don't get the job done this year. So I think that there's a real chance that they just want a guy to plug in and say he's going to impact the roster now. Whereas if you draft Shedeur, he may not start a game for you as a rookie. He may not beat out what's on your roster currently. So I'm buying it. I do just think it's a victim of circumstance at this point.
If you look at that Cleveland Browns quarterback depth chart and you think they're going to pass on Shedeur Sanders, I got a plane carrying 40 Smurfs to sell you outside my house right now. There is no way on LeBron James's internet that they're going to pass on a quarterback with Kenny Pickett right now as their QB1. I don't care who else they want to bring in. Kirk Cousins that we saw get benched in Atlanta for Michael Penix. There is no way that Shedeur Sanders falls past 2. Now, the Giants may pass on him, yeah, because he's going to be going by 2. That's how I feel about Shedeur Sanders and the Cleveland Browns.
So we just saw a list of our draft analysts there. Some had 3. Chris Trapasso had 9. But Emory says at 2 and not even 3 because the Giants won't have the ability to take Shedeur because it's already going to be Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders 1v2. You mentioned the Browns. What are the draft needs, Emory, here when we're talking about Cleveland?
Look at their quarterback depth chart, man. It's screaming at you in big, bold letters. Quarterback. Number 1, obviously that's what they need because they have to find someone that can help carry this team moving forward. But also they need a running back. Now, they may bring back Nick Chubb or whatnot, but they still need a guy that's younger, more explosive, more dynamic. And also they need a wide receiver. I love what they've done with Jerry Jeudy, but they need someone outside of that strikes fear in the hearts of defenders. And so all of their needs, in my opinion, all their immediate needs on offense, quarterback, running back, and wide receiver.
It's interesting here because I got the lucky end of the straw getting the top 10 teams, Jacqueline. So all their draft needs, these are talent void teams here. Mike, the Giants, where do we go from here with New York?
I'm looking along the line of scrimmage. They did a lot in free agency. Honestly, I thought they did a great job of plugging holes. And so there really aren't that many. Now, the guy playing next to Dexter Lawrence is a big hole, though. They don't have a second DT option. And when you have a Dexter Lawrence who's so impactful, gosh, it doesn't take much. You can be an average defensive tackle, and you can rack up stats in that defense because of how much attention gets paid there. So I'm looking DT, then offensive line. Obviously, the New York Giants offensive line has been a point of contention for years. And if you're in that division right now, looking up at the Philadelphia Eagles, you're like, please, Lord, I'll take whatever I can get along the offensive line. I want what they have. So O-line, and then I think the linebacker position. But like I said, they've done a fantastic job of filling out these holes. So really, there aren't that many. They just need guys to play better at the positions they've drafted highly in recent years.
Renner, I'll come right back to you. Top of the draft with the Titans here. Obviously, the focus is on quarterback. A lot of people think Cam Ward will go there. But outside of that, what continues to still be a need there for Tennessee?
Yeah, it's people for Cam Ward to throw the ball to. It is wide receivers. They have Calvin Ridley and then nada. It is a tough room. It was a tough room last year, and that's why the offense was as anemic as it was. So they need pass catchers, and they need more than one, in my opinion. They need as much help as they can get. And after that, they need pass rushers. Lost Harold Landry this offseason. They really don't have an edge guy to complement those behemoths they have on the interior. One of the better interiors along the defensive line in football, but one of the weaker edge groups as well.
Emory, let me get to you with New England. They had a lot of cap space this offseason. Last time I checked, they spent a lot of it on defense. Do I assume they try to go offense here, or what else are you looking at with the Patriots?
Yeah, they have to continue to build that offense, Tommy. And I think, one, you look at left tackle. They got to find a way to get Will Campbell or anyone that can play that left tackle spot, because I think that's the glaring need right now offensively. But I would also throw out running back. Ramondre Stevenson falls out of favor every other week, right? So you got to get somebody that you can depend on and count on. And that wide receiver room probably could use another guy. I know they've added a lot of young talent last year in the draft. Kayshon Boutte, Javon Baker, who I'm a big fan of, out of UCF, who was fantastic. But also you bring in Stephon Diggs, who's coming off of an injury. But if Luther Burton is there still early in the second round, you got to go and grab that. So I would say left tackle, running back, surprisingly, and also wide receiver.
Quick follow-up, Emory. Are you a Will Campbell guy or Kelvin Banks guy or someone else?
Yes, and here's my thing about Will Campbell. If you've done it against guys that are going to be in the NFL, I don't have any issues with you doing it at the NFL level.
Okay, let's get to Jacqueline's Jags. Mike, what do you have for Jacksonville?
I'm starting with the interior of the offensive line. It's just Trevor Lawrence is your franchise at this point. You got to protect him better. They signed a couple free agents, Robert Hainsey, Patrick McCarry. That's not enough, in my opinion. You need to go and get somewhere, probably on day 2, though. DT is the one where I'm looking day 1. I think Mason Graham, the Michigan DT, to the Jacksonville Jags has been like everyone's mock favorite, and it just makes too much sense. It's a position of need. They have those edge guys, and Trayvon Walker, Josh Allen. They don't really have the interior. And then last, I'm looking at safety. They're playing like cast-offs from other teams at safety right now. Darnell Savage, Packers didn't want him. Eric Murray, Texans didn't want him. They got to get a lot better at the safety position there in Jacksonville.
Emory, I'm turning to you. Vegas Raiders, what do we got?
Well, they have a couple, and they kind of depends on who's there at 6, right? You got receiver they need. If you look at that receiver one, everyone is talking about running back, justifiably so, because that's the second major need. It could be 1A, 1B. So wide receiver, running back, and I also think they need a ball hawking free safety on the back end, someone that can really erase mistakes in that regard. But wide receiver for Geno Smith, backfield help, they need a game breaker at either one of those 2 spots, and they could preferably get that early in this year's draft.
Mike, follow up on the Raiders here because they're talking about Ashton Genty. There's that kid Hampton out as well. Is there a steep drop-off in your opinion between the two?
I don't think it's steep, but I do think Ashton Genty is like top 10 pick worthy. He is that talented. But Omarion Hampton's also like first-round pick worthy. So, I don't think it's a massive, massive drop-off. Those guys are just darn good running back prospects.
Back to you, Mike. The Jets draft needs.
The Jets, it's all on the offense, right? With how much they lost between Aaron Rodgers, between Devontae Adams, you need pass catchers. You got Garrett Wilson and then Alan Lazard. You don't want him as your number 2. They didn't want him as a number 2 a few years ago, right? So they need another pass catcher. They need a tight end. Lost Tyler Conklin in free agency. Jeremy Ruckert is more of a blocker than a true pass catcher at the tight end position. And they need a right tackle. That's maybe where my eyes are looking first. Armand Membu, if he's on the board there at 7, I'm running in that card for him because the other 4 positions along that O-line, they're young, and they're pretty darn good. If you just get one more guy in there at the right tackle position, you could have one of the makings of a special offensive line in New York.
So you're bullish on that O-line because we're talking about Justin Fields, who has the ability to dance around in that pocket a little bit, want to use his legs?
100%. And I think it's a good run-blocking offensive line, too. I fully expect him and Breece Hall to put up some numbers on the ground this next season.
Okay, let's get to the Panthers. Emory, I mean, they do love their running backs. They like to sign them to long-term deals. What are some of the draft needs for Carolina?
Listen, I almost put running back on that because if Chuba Hubbard fumbles that football one more doggone time, right? And so between him, Jonathan Brooks, that is not able to stay healthy, unfortunately, running back almost made this list, but they need someone to close out the game defensively. They have no pass rush. They got to find someone that can bring it off the edge, in my opinion. Pass rush would be number 1. I can even see cornerback being another opportunity to really build depth in that secondary, guys that can take the ball away. And how about wide receiver? Continue to stockpile weapons around your franchise quarterback, Bryce Young, who turned it on by the midway point of the season after he came back from being benched and really looked lights out, had the Panthers in playoff contention by winning that NFC South division toward the back end of the season. So he's trending in the right direction. those are the needs, in my opinion, coming into this draft.
So it sounds like, Mike, that Emory's kind of buying what Carolina was able to do at the end of the year. There's always going to be a handful of teams that have a nice end to the season, but you don't know if you can buy it and have it carry over to next season. Where are you at when it comes to Carolina here in 25?
I'm buying. Bryce Young, he just looked different. Now, I think Emory hit the nail on the head there. He needs guys to like finish these plays and to make some more plays for him. But he was leading them down for a game-winning drive against the world champ Philadelphia Eagles, right? Like he was in crunch time, looked like the Bryce Young in Alabama. So encouraging signs, but you need to put the talent around him for those encouraging signs to turn into encouraging wins.
Yeah, and it shows you that we just got to give a lot of these guys patience, and give them grace to grow into that role. Like quarterback and someone like Bryce Young, everyone was writing him off earlier in the season. He struggled, but let him work through those struggles like they did. He got back out there and made everybody look like geniuses on that coaching staff, because maybe he just needed to sit down, catch his breath, get back out there and go ball like he did.
We're talking to you, Pete Prisco. We're talking to you when it comes to Bryce Young. All right, let's get back on track. Mike, the New Orleans Saints in draft needs.
They have a bunch, right? You're not in this position as top 10 pick with this aging roster without them. But I think left guard is the one position where I'm like, if they filled that, the rest of the offensive line, a lot of highly drafted guys on it, a lot of talented guys on it. I think left guard's the one position I'm looking to fill. And then defensively, you can really address anywhere on this roster defensively, except for probably safety, just because you got aging players at edge and Cam Jordan, linebacker Demario Davis. But DT is probably your weakest link alongside cornerback. So the New Orleans Saints, you have to be a little forward thinking with this draft. You got to be addressing valuable positions that can make an impact. I'd also throw in like a possession wide receiver too, because you got a bunch of skinny, fast guys. You got no one that can really run a slant over the middle of the football field. So a lot of positions that need to be addressed in New Orleans.
A lot of positions, but one of them not quarterback. Our producer, Emory, wants to ask you why quarterback is not on Mike's list. Is it because you have faith in Derek Carr? What do we think about Spencer Rattler and company? I mean, what do you make of the quarterback situation in NOLA?
Yeah, there's no faith in Derek Carr. It's all faith in Spencer Rattler. And NFL coaches around the league have spoken highly about Spencer Rattler. I'm surprised to see potholes not on that list too. Man, there's a big pothole by my mom's house on the corner that's been there for 5 years. They have to start getting these streets ready to get fixed in New Orleans. That should be need number one down in the Big Easy.
Let's get to the Bears, who had that offseason trying to fortify that offensive line here. And Emory, what do you make of Chicago, Caleb Williams, and what they're doing out there in the Windy City?
Yeah, they've given themselves a lot of wiggle room here with this pick. I wouldn't be surprised to see this pick moved in the draft to go and get a specific player or trade back to get more assets, because free safety is someone that I can think they need to get younger behind Kevin Byard, who's a really good player, fantastic pro, but he's up there in age. You also look at guard, because he did so great on the interior in free agency. Get some young depth behind those guys. And defensive tackle, to me, is another area where they can continue to build depth, because they did so well in free agency on both sides of the ball. There's no immediate needs right now for Chicago, so they can really go ahead and go best player available in this whole draft.
We are putting Mike Renner and Emory Hunt to work here at HQ Spotlight. Guys, don't go anywhere. We got to hit a break. We're bringing you back to join Jacqueline to talk about the Cowboys. Dak Prescott, Micah Parsons. They did get Joe Milton today, so at least they made some type of move early-ish. We'll tackle that next here on the show.
Back here on HQ Spotlight, the Niners coming off of a 6-11 season, and they've watched several key players leaving the organization in the offseason, but this guy, their QB1, Brock Purdy, he is still there, and he is still in line for what is seemingly a big payday. We've been hearing for months how the Niners and Purdy are motivated to get some sort of an extension done. Nothing has happened yet, so why the wait? We're still waiting to see what happens there. Let's welcome back Mike Renner and Emory Hunt here to discuss. We're looking at the Niners, talking about their draft needs to kick things off in this block, considering all of the offseason moves. Also, still having to get some sort of deal done with Brock Purdy. Renner, where do they start in terms of the draft?
I'm thinking offensive line. I think the interior of this offensive line has been an issue for a while. I think it cost them the Super Bowl when Chris Jones took over a couple years ago. And they addressed it last year with Dominic Puni, but they got the left guard and the center position that are still probably liabilities. So that's where I'm looking. But then I'm also looking defensive line. That Super Bowl defensive line that we knew and loved that was so dominant ain't walking through that door anymore. I think your average NFL fan right now would struggle to name a 49ers defensive lineman outside of Nick Bosa. It's just not a talented unit. We saw that down the stretch, and they lost some from it in Javon Hargrave, Leonard Floyd from last year. So man, I'm worried about the 49ers D-line. It's going to take a while to rebuild. They got to start right now.
Yeah, that is a long list of departures that we've seen out there in San Francisco this offseason. Let's keep it in the NFC, and we're going to talk about the Cowboys. Emory, man, there's always a lot going on in terms of the headlines, right? So Zach Martin, he is retiring. Most recently, we've seen that dialogue with Jerry Jones and Micah Parsons, his agent. What deal's going to get done there? Who knows? And we know the run game has been suffering for quite some time. So, Emory, what takes priority there in the Big D?
Listen, you go back to Walt Garrison, Calvin Hill, Tony Dorsett, Herschel Walker, Emmitt Smith. You could always name the Dallas Cowboys starting tailback, right? And now you really can't, and that's a problem for Big D. So that's the number one need in the draft class, Jacqueline. It is running back. They have to find someone that can be the guy for America's position on America's team, and that's running back. But they also need guard. You brought up Zach Martin retiring. That's a big need right there in the second round, in my opinion, or in the first round, whatever decided which way they may go. And defensive line, I put defensive line because they could use help on the edge. We know they need help on the interior. They couldn't stop the run last year. I do feel like they have to address that multiple times in April, late April, talking about the defensive line.
Yeah, and a lot of our mock drafts here at CBS Sports have Ashton Genty going there and filling that void in Dallas. Let's talk about the Miami Dolphins. They paid Tua not too long ago. What was that, last offseason? And it's a fan base, Mike, that just really wants one dang playoff win. It's been a long time, but what direction should they go when it comes to the draft?
I'm looking at the defense here. They lost a lot in recent years. They never really backfilled, losing Christian Wilkins last year, so defensive tackle is a big need for them. They didn't really backfill, losing Javon Holland. They signed a couple cast-offs in Ashton Davis, Ifeatu Melifonwu, but I'm looking at the safety position as well. And then cornerback, losing Kendall Fuller. Like, they've lost a lot via free agency, via their cap situation on the defense side of the ball, that they need to go out and make some additions there. I think you could also add to this offensive line, left guard, a position where is probably the weak link right now, and you probably need a left tackle in the future. So that's where my eyes are as well, but a lot of holes to fill in this Miami roster, unfortunately.
Emory, let's look at the quarterback position there in Miami. I know Zach Wilson is in Miami now as well, but do you think that they should target a quarterback for a backup for Tua? Because his health, of course, has been a big concern over the last couple of years.
I kind of like Zach Wilson and what he showed in the preseason for Denver, but if you want to add a quarterback, why not go to Dylan Gabriel, who's left-handed, kind of fits that mold of getting the ball out quickly, accurately, in the short to quick intermediate area, or even someone like a Quinn Ewers, who does a great job with the timing-based offense, getting out on the move on those half boots, half waggles, all of those things. Those are some options, but I kind of like to see what Zach Wilson can do in that offense. Can he stack positive preseason performances like he was able to do against with the Broncos?
Mike, you're a big Dylan Gabriel guy. You're really high on him. What are your thoughts on him potentially going to Miami, or what else seems like a fit for him in your eyes?
Oh, I love the Miami fit. It probably is my favorite. I think any of the teams that have like a 6 foot and under quarterback, I would love to add Dylan Gabriel as their backup, because like it or not, when you're 6 foot and under, like, you just have to run different concepts. There are plays in the playbook that you don't run because you don't have the sight lines to do so. That's going to be the case with Dylan Gabriel, but if he goes to one of those situations, well, it ain't going to be a real problem. You can run the exact same playbooks.
All right, we're going to go to the Colts, and we're hearing where AR, Daniel Jones, splitting those first-team reps at quarterback there. It is a winnable division for the Colts, but Emory, where should they look when it comes to the draft?
Tight end. They need someone over the middle of the field that can help out the young quarterback, Anthony Richardson, to help out their run game. Someone like a Tyler Warren would be a great fit because he can also block, get aggressive in the run game. But we've seen him do things with the ball in his hands. Colston Loveland would be another good option. Any great tight end would be a great option for Indianapolis. They also need a linebacker. They haven't really been the same in the middle since Shaq Leonard left that football team. I know they had E.J. Speed, who just left via free agency. They have, Zaire Franklin, who's a really good player, but they need an impact linebacker as well. And I also feel like they need help along the defense, the offensive line, in terms of depth is concerned. We saw what happened last year when they got banged up along the offensive front. The offense subsequently suffered. So building depth along that offensive line is another great way to go.
Well, let's go to Atlanta for the Falcons, where it looks like, of course, it's Michael Penix Jr.'s team moving forward. We know they have some playmakers on offense in Bijan and Drake London, but Mike, where else do they need to build around Michael Penix?
I think you need to add a center. You lost Drew Dahlman in free agency to the Chicago Bears. Really no one there to backfill him on the roster. So that's a position I'm looking at, but maybe not too early. And again, there's not a lot of centers in this draft class to go out and find. Then they need an edge rusher. That's where I'm looking early. I can't remember. I mean, I can't remember, but it's been like over a decade since the Falcons really had an impact guy on the edge. It seems like every year we're like, go out and get a pass rusher. This year they got it. It's a deep class. You got pick 15. Just get the top player available, and you'll be fine. And then cornerback. Outside of A.J. Terrell, it's a very weak cornerback group. He's a great number one, but if you add a number two, that pass defense will improve a lot.
3 more teams to get through. Emory, let's talk about the Cardinals. What direction should they go? Who should they be targeting when it comes to positions there in the draft?
I feel like initially they have to go defensive line. When I'm talking about defensive line, I'm specifically talking about a 5-tech, someone that can play that role, someone that can be moved around that defensive front like a Walter Nolan out of Ole Miss, because you got Darius Robinson, who I was a big fan of coming out of Missouri last year, but he was banged up, so he's coming back from injury. I know they went out and got Calais Campbell, who's 79 years old, but he can still play. But you have to get someone younger and a little bit more athletic on that defensive front. Cornerback is another position I think they can always look to get better with their depth there. And interior offensive line depth is another place where I feel like Arizona, especially when you're dealing with a shorter quarterback, and that's where offense tends to have to happen. Guard, center guard, getting depth there is on the right track towards success.
Mike, we just showed your mock, and you have them taking Kenneth Grant in your latest mock. What do you like about that fit? Tell us more about that.
The interior need is so massive that you're just taking anyone, right, to fill it. He mentioned 5-tech. Kenneth Grant's not really a 5-tech, but he can play up and down the line of scrimmage. He's got a unique body type for a 330-pounder that if you wanted to play him out there, I think he could get the job done. So a real high upside sort of nose tackle body with his explosiveness that, again, it's such a drastic need that if you go into next season with the group you got right now, you're just not winning the West, in my opinion.
Let's go to the AFC North, talking about the Bengals, where they paid their guys in T. Higgins and Jamar Chase. Trey Hendrickson, we're kind of still waiting to see what's going to happen there. And Emory, we know Cincinnati has not drafted well when it comes to defense in the past, but what should they do in this upcoming draft?
Well, one, they should, bring back the old school uniforms that they wore back when Jeff Blake and those guys were quarterback. But I'm going to punt it to Mike. Mike has more of a handle on Cincinnati than anyone on this panel. So, Mike, what you think Cincinnati should do in this situation?
Former Cincinnati resident here, been there 7 years. I think I'm looking at the guard position. The interior of that offensive line, it's just not good enough. And there's a guy in Tyler Booker coming out of Alabama who fits those mammoth tackles they got. They got the biggest tackle duo in the NFL. If you put Tyler Booker, one of the biggest guard builds that you'll ever see, right next to him, you're going to have some crushing double teams. That's a guy I like a lot. But they're in a weird position then because defensively, the defense was terrible last year, right? I think everyone's like, yeah, all the needs are on defense. But they've drafted so many guys, first, second rounders. Every position kind of has a guy that was either a first, second, or third rounder that they want to start. They're just not good enough to start. So you could mention D-line, but they got Miles Murphy there. And drafted Chris Jenkins there last year as well. You could mention safety, but they drafted Jordan Battle there a couple years ago and signed Geno Stone. So it's like, yeah, they got to get better, but the guys they drafted got to play better too.
Emory, I'm so sorry. I should have known when we were talking about Cincinnati, we had to go to Mike Renner. I don't know if you know this, Emory, but Mike and I met when I was at the local station in Cincinnati. I was interviewing Mike because he was a local celebrity in the area. So he came on set, and so I should have known Bengals Mike Renner. All right, let's talk about the Seahawks, Emory. It is a new era there in Seattle because Sam Darnold's the guy. DK Metcalf is no longer there. He is in Pittsburgh. In terms of the draft, what should Seattle do?
And we know you're a big cat fan as well, too. So any big cat, you're a big fan of that. So I think Seattle has to go wide receiver. You bring in Sam Darnold, who just left a great situation in Minnesota with 3 excellent receiving options, including the tight end. But now you have depleted a little bit of what they had on the roster. I know you brought in Cooper Kupp. You already have Jackson Smith and Jigba there as well. So you're off to a good start, but add more talent at wide receiver. I also look at cornerback. They have to get a little bit more talented outside of what they already have in Witherspoon and Rick Woolen. You have another spot for a guy to get better at cornerback, and also offensive line depth across the board. Guys got banged up throughout the course of the last, 2 or 3 years in Seattle, and when their depth gets exposed, the offense gets exposed. They got to build that depth on their offensive line.
Emory, Mike, we certainly appreciated going down a handful of teams and talking to us about their biggest draft needs as the upcoming draft is just a couple of weeks away. And of course, the conversation continues on the With the First Pick podcast with Ryan Wilson, Mike, Emory, friends of the show. They're on a whole lot. You can download, follow, listen wherever you listen to your favorite shows, or you can watch right now by scanning that QR code on your screen.